everyone. I just wanted to make this video as an introduction and an explanation, I guess, towards something I've been working on for the past little bit called D2 Query. This is a knowledge retrieval service for different Destiny 2 game mechanics and just overall general knowledge base. For right now, the scope of the knowledge that is indexed here is primarily driven from something called Destiny Data Compendium. Many players might already be familiar with this, but if not, it is a community-run spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, that has many of the mechanics, perks, weapons, mods, knowledge about the game in much more detail than what you can find in-game or from any official source through a lot of community testing. That served as the primary source for the knowledge base, so I want to thank them again for kind of helping out with getting access to that data. And in addition to that, we also have patch notes that are being contributed to from destiny.bungie.org, which is a community-run site to archive all of the patch notes from the bungie.net site. So, this knowledge retrieval service, what does that actually mean? What does it look like here? Well, like I said, we have a lot of data here, and you can see that we have things, for example, like patch notes, abilities, game mechanics, exotic items, armor and weapon mods, just as examples. And there are different ways to actually query and interact with this service here. So if we were to look through some of these, I'll start off with kind of a high-level summary of all of the different methods here. Just something, if you just want to watch a quick summary of what this is, that little intro part explains what the data is, what is the service, where is it from, all that stuff there. And then now looking into how you can actually interact and use this service here. There are three methods, the Discord bot, the chat interface, and the developer API. Start off here with the Discord bot. So looking at this, you can see a bunch of screenshots, examples here of the actual Discord bot in action. So for the different type of commands that we have, for example, abilities, subclass mechanics, armor mods, subclass mods, Destiny blogs, gear perks, exotic armors, and exotic weapons, you're able to perform your searches for different terms, different items in the game, get back the records from the database here. So if you just want to have this in a very accessible place, you might want to just add it to your Discord server in order to let you to query the D2 Query knowledge base. The second method there was a chat type experience. So there are both options for an in-browser type of hosted chat. We'll go over the details on that, but you can either run something locally in browser or connect your own OpenAI API key in order to have a OpenAI powered chat here. This in-browser chat gets access to all of the data inside of the D2 Query knowledge base. In addition to the browser type hosting, browser type chat experience, I should say, we also have the ability to connect through MCP to the D2 Query MCP servers. So if you do already pay for, let's say, a pro subscription, something like OpenAI or Anthropic, you're able to connect those chats up. Or even if you are someone who runs a model locally, as long as you have the ability to add an MCP server, you are able to connect D2 Query to that. And finally, we have the API. So this is a REST API. If you go to d2query.com/docs, you're able to view the documentation page. That's the Swagger UI of the actual REST API. In our case, it is just a number of get endpoints here. You're able to specify all of your different parameters for the different endpoints and then make your queries in browser. This gives you a way to both explore the actual API, perform manual searches yourself in a very similar way to what you might do with something like the Discord bot, while also being able to actually play around and see what all of the schema and parameters are. So now that we've gone over kind of that high-level summary, let's look at a live demo, just seeing kind of what this looks like actually interacting with each part of the system. So once again, we'll start off here with the Discord bot here, so we can see that we are in the official D2 Query Discord server. And we have the bot loaded up here, ready to be used. So I'll go ahead and start off here with just some examples of some commands. So if we take a look here, you can see all of the different commands that you have access to with D2 Query. I'll do a couple examples here, but we'll go for something like /abilities. And you can type in your query here. In our case, let's say we want to look up Thunderclap as an example. You can send off that command and get back your result here. You get back the details about Thunderclap, the cooldown, ability type, the classes, subclasses, things of that sort. And some other examples here, if we were to look at something like exotic weapons, if we wanted to look at something like Parasite. You can get the result for Parasite or any other exotic weapons. Another final example here, if we look at something like exotic armors, let's say we, instead of looking for a specific armor piece, we want to look up ones that interact with diamond lances. So what we might do instead is we might go and say this query intent, we're going to change it from a known item to an open-ended query for diamond lances, and let's say that I want to pull the top 5 results from that. Send that result, and now we can see the top 5 results here. Obviously, in terms of diamond lances here, there's really only one kind of most relevant result, which is this Cadmus Ridge lance cap here. But you can see whatever other results it might have. In our case, given the lacking other diamond lance interactions here, you don't really get that back, but just an example of how you can call this query here with many different results to get back what you might need. So let's take a look now at the chat experience. As I mentioned, you have 2 different options. You can either run it in browser, so you're able to actually download a model and run locally. So this will use your own local hardware. It's done fully through the browser. It'll pull your model and it will automatically use your GPU, whatever hardware you might have. This does take up kind of like the resource of your local machine, just be aware of that. But you have the ability to load different sizes of models depending on your hardware choices. So we'll go ahead and start this here. And you can see that in about 10 seconds or so, I've downloaded a model locally to my browser, and I'm able to actually start using it right off the bat here. So you get the chat experience. As I mentioned, you get everything locally processed in your browser. And let's go ahead and see a sample query of this here. So we'll ask it what is volatile. It will do some thinking and loading here. It'll perform some tool calls and then generation here. And we should see, there we go, a final result here with the answer to our question. So we'll see not only was our question answered here, talking about what volatile is, we also take a look at what it actually is doing here. Because, as you might know from using other kind of Gen AI chat experiences, the results sometimes are hallucinations, not based fully in fact. So I want to make sure that you did have transparency into what actually is going on behind the scenes. Take a look here. We can see first that it looked up the term volatile to a term map. We're going to come back with a bunch of results and find that volatile can be found inside of the subclass mechanics tool. We then search that subclass mechanics tool for the term volatile, and we can get back our result here that volatile with its description and the subclass being void. And then from this result, it's able to give back its result because the actual generated result here answers your question now that it has enough information here. So all of these different steps kind of happen here. And then you're able to get back your result. Now, as a disclaimer of kind of what to expect with this, when you are using these local models, the results are not as high quality. The questions do have to be a little bit more simple. It's more of a limitation just of the actual model size itself. And it is also far more brittle. As a result of that, there is likely to be, if you ask it a more complex question, it might give you something like an error telling you to retry or something of that sort. There are some things that can be done to kind of improve this, but there are also just limitations of the actual model size itself that I had to work around to try to make this work. But this does let you do something entirely kind of offline in terms of the fact that you're not sending this off to any data center. You're running it locally on your own hardware if you want to do so. Now, let's say here, instead, you don't want to do the local model. You can then instead go to your OpenAI setup here. And in this case, I have a API key ready to go that I can give as an example. We'll start our chat with that. And before I get any comments on this, that API key will be revoked before this video is uploaded. So now we get a chat that is powered by OpenAI, and I can ask it a more complex question and see how it does. So let's start off something like this. Let's say something more abstract. Can you compare elemental honing and bait and switch? And let's see what it does here. So to start off, it is searching for elemental honing. It is searching for bait and switch. It's then searching the actual descriptions here. Now that it knows that it's both weapon perks, it gets back the results, and then give us back our nice summary here, comparing those 2 perks and kind of seeing what it's at. So, looking at this, direct comparison, elemental honing and bait and switch. So, we have elemental honing. It talks about what it does exactly, so you can actually get the kind of step-by-step for each of the values. Bait and switch, its trigger, what happens here, the comparison, The damage potential is talking here about how elemental honing goes up to a higher amount, whereas bait and switch is this here. The ease of activation, it talks about the fact that you have to have different elemental sources versus one from only one hit from each of the 3 weapons. So you can see its summary kind of at the very bottom here. Use elemental honing if you naturally use multiple weapons with subclasses, multiple different elements from subclasses and weapons. If you want a higher ceiling of your total result, and you will have longer engagement perhaps to ramp up and maintain stacks, or bait and switch if you are doing something more comfortable and it's simple and reliable here. So pretty solid answer overall to the question. Something that, once again, is kind of grounded in actual data here, talking about what these 2 perks are, and then able to give a more comprehensive and abstract answer. And again, like I mentioned, if you tried to ask the same question to that local model, it just won't work. To be quite transparent here for expectations, the local model is not going to be able to answer something like this. So that's the benefit of using something like this OpenAI key. Now, you might ask yourself here, what if I don't want, or if I don't have an API key, or I don't trust enter my API key into this tool, which is a fair concern. I guess 2 things to call out. Firstly, like this disclaimer says, the API key is not logged or saved anywhere. It is used locally in your browser session just for the connection to OpenAI. This is not sent anywhere else, but it is still something that you have to be comfortable with in terms of the actual security model, because it is otherwise a risk of having that being leaked. So if you do instead want to use your own custom code, or you want to use your own desktop client, or you want to just use perhaps the ChatGPT interface directly, as long as you're able to connect a MCP server to it, you can go and use, I'll type this in right here, but https d2query.com/MCP. If you use this URL as your MCP server, you will be able to connect D2Query to any other MCP compatible, assuming that it has streamable HTTP compatibility. So that might be a custom code client that you run. It might be something like a Claude desktop. It might be something like I think like the OpenAI Plus subscription, for example, I think you can connect this to. So anything that supports that, you're able to programmatically have this be available to other agents or LLM chats. So finally here, taking a look at the D2Query API. So this is the API documentation that you can see all of the different endpoints at. So as you can see, we have our schemas, the different data models here, our different endpoints. If you do want to do this more in a development setting, you can go something like our openapi.json to get the API spec. But if you're using this just to kind of browse the different endpoints and actually call them yourself in browser, let's see how that might look. So we'll use some similar queries to what we did on the Discord bot, just to kind of show the parity that we have with features here. So looking at the ability endpoint, if we want to look at something like Thunderclap and execute that, you're able to run that query and immediately get back your result in chat here of the actual results. So on the same page, you can get back kind of like your request response type of flow through this API endpoint instead of doing something more programmatically. If you wanted to look up some other things here, like if you look at the exotic armors, press something like a heart of inmost light, that up, get back our result. If you wanted to do an open-ended query again, let's choose that diamond lance again here. Say oh my lord, diamond lance, open-ended, and then we can execute that. We can see here that we get that Cadmus Ridge landscape here. So again, this API docs page is primarily meant just to provide both a way for you to just call the API endpoints directly, as we saw on the Discord bot and the LLM tool calls. It's the same set of endpoints and retriever services that is actually powering all this. Again, D2Query is kind of just the backend knowledge base, is kind of what's powering this as a backend service, but this is just one of the many ways that you can actually interface with the service. And if you wanted something fully in browser, and if you want to call the endpoints here, this might be pretty easy. This provides pretty comparable or like feature parity with the Discord bot, for example, in terms of just being able to perform your own direct query. So, final shout out again here. I wanted to mention, I know we looked at this page at the beginning of the video here, kind of as a screenshot form, but here we are on the actual website. So, if you were to go to d2query.com, you can see the actual site. Again, I want to thank our sources here. We have our Destiny Data Compendium and destiny.bungie.org for an archive of all our Bungie articles. You can link out to the Discord bot if you want to invite it to your server. You can link out to the chat page. You can go to the docs page, whatever you might want to do. You can also join our Discord. If you have any bug reports, any feature requests, if you want to ask me any questions about the technical implementation of how the fuck this works, feel free to do so. So you can visit all those things there. And finally here, looking at our roadmap. So just some high-level items here. None of this is actually due set in stone or promised. This might change depending on how things go or if anyone actually cares about the service at all. But we have a number of different things. The first, there is certainly room to grow in terms of the result quality. There's a number of technical optimizations I would like to make on the search results. However, it is primarily a limitation of compute right now. Currently trying to keep the costs somewhat low, especially in this kind of first initial beta release. But there are some improvements I'd like to make in terms of the quality of what is actually returned. There's a number of things that are missing as kind of gaps in the knowledge. For example, the exotic armor, it doesn't actually say what type of armor piece it is, because that is not something that is in Compendium, where the data came from, for example. There's no field that says that the Heart of Endless Light is a chess piece. It instead just knows that it's a Titan exotic. And obviously, as a viewer, I can see the image, and I know the Heart of Endless Light is a chess piece, but not something that the actual index currently has. This is true for a couple different things, primarily where they have an image-based indicator for a certain piece of information. So there are some gaps that I'd like to fill in. And then aside from that, there are just other sets of data that I'd love to have be integrated here. Things like weapon damage numbers, the boss knowledge. These two things, I might have to hit up Aegis for this. Get some information about the kind of different weapon values. It would be really great as kind of a future goal to be able to ask a question to the chat, for example, to say, hey, I am fighting Rolk, for example. What is the best option this season to deal damage to him? And if it's able to look up how long the boss encounter is, what the total health is, what ranges is available for kind of, like obviously for Rolk, it's kind of mid-range, short-range, can't really hit crits too well, depending, obviously, someone can float or whatever. But if you can do that, and then also look up the damage numbers and query for the kind of best options for time to empties in that time frame, stuff of that sort, you can get a great answer. I think it would be super helpful and kind of nice to see kind of come together. I could also have things like encounter knowledge, being able to look up mechanics for encounters, different challenges, how do you do the challenge, how do you do the triumph. These type of knowledge that people might have just from running the raid or having people teach them it would be pretty cool, especially I think for the new player experience, to be able to actually search up and get knowledge about some of this older content to be able to figure out how you should actually run these things and how this works. In general, if you have ideas of what you might like to see here, things you might want in terms of how you can interact and query the service, how you might, or what information you might want in the service in terms of it would be helpful to be able to look these things up. If you have any bugs that you notice, if you have any confusing errors or weird behavior, feel free to let me know. You can join the Discord that we have linked from the site. I'd love to see any sort of questions or involvement here, and potentially contributions in the future if that is something that we kind of move towards. But yeah, feel free to let me know, and I appreciate you sticking to the end if you are still here. Again, if you do want to view all of the kind of actionable links, just go to d2query.com. You're able to get the Discord bot, the chat interface, as well as the documentation for the REST API. If you join our Discord, there is additional information for other items here, particularly if you do want to connect to something like the MCP server, or if you have any other questions about the kind of API integration, something more programmatic, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.